In the automotive industry, cars come and go. However, there was one popular Ford automobile that a lot of people loved and then completely disappeared from the face of the earth. What is it? It's the Ford Maverick. So while I was in Dallas, Texas, I had the opportunity to drive one of the Mavericks and see what it was all about. Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're in a 1974 Ford Maverick, a car that a lot of people seem to have forgotten about, which is weird. Ford Maverick was one of those cars that tried to kind of compete with the Nova and a few cars of that lineage. But what's even funnier to me was doing some research at this car. They wanted this car to rival the Volkswagen Beetle, which is strange because it's a big car compared to the Beetle and it wasn't a compact. But they built this car to take on Datsun, Honda, Nissan, people just coming into the US market. Very strange overall with this big old car. But the predecessor to this car was the Ford Falcon, and the Ford Falcon would later return later down the road, but it basically got decimated by their own car. The Mustang completely killed off the Falcon. They couldn't even pass the safety regulation in the Falcon. Despite like a big redesign in 1966, they were like, nope, can't make the Falcon anymore, it's dead, so we're gonna have to come up with something different. So they came up with the Maverick, and it's no surprise that the Maverick has a lot of the same similar body lines as the Mustang. It's got the fastback slant of the roof line all the way in the back, and it's kind of meaty. It actually has more of a Nova kind of look than the Mustang in my opinion, but I still think it looks really cool, and it really didn't pique my interest again about the Maverick until I saw Sung Kang's Maverick that he built at SEMA, because I totally forgot the Maverick existed for a while. And though it's not an insult to the car, it's just they were killed off before the 1980s, and so I totally had that go right over my head about the Maverick. But this car belongs to my buddy Travis, and he was kind enough to drive all the way out here to Fort Worth to let me drive it. The steering overall is a classic car steering. That's the best way I can describe it. You're not gonna have the nannies and the technology of today, but once you got turned in, there's a little bit of a dead zone, but once you're past the dead zone, you're perfectly fine. But going back to Sung Kang's Maverick, he had an EcoBoost motor in his, and I saw it at SEMA, and that kind of piqued my interest to be like, well, maybe I should build a Maverick. And then I was like, that's a big undertaking. So I really thought about it and was eh. But then Travis was telling me that they originally were going to be inline six cars, so Sung Kang kind of did almost what they did, but in a modern fashion. But with an inline six in this thing wouldn't have gone anywhere. So they put a 302 in it, and the engineers even designed it to where they could sneak a 302 in it if they absolutely had to. So with the 302 in it, it is very similar to a lot of the other cars of the same era. It's carbureted, but this one starts right up and go. Oh yeah, I didn't mention that the speedometer's broken, so I gotta make sure I slow down just with my butt dyno. It's funny though, when you drive a carbureted car too, when you get on the gas, you literally smell gas, because there's that extra fuel that probably wasn't burned. If somebody's carburetor is done really well, you won't have the smell as much. Some people just dump so much fuel that it's even hard to drive around. Out of all the classic cars I've ever reviewed on the channel, this one has started up the fastest. A lot of the times I'm sitting on the side of the road trying to kind of figure things out because I don't know carburetors at all. So if it has any sort of elevation change, anything where the density altitude's different, okay, that was like full lock for barely a turn. The sound of it is that throaty carbureted 302 that so many people loved for so long before direct injection and all that kind of stuff came along. For ECUs in general. But the interior is pretty rad. He actually has not the original seat, because these are out of a Mazda, I believe. Okay, I can't turn, I need to slow down. Well, the seats are actually out of a Mazda, which is interesting because you have these modern seats that have an airbag tag on it, yet the front dash is all original pretty much, but he has the GT Grant steering wheel that makes it life a lot easier than a big, giant classic steering wheel that feels like you're driving a bus. That's the one thing about driving classic cars that is difficult, is having the massive steering wheel, because they have that for leverage, because there's usually not very good power steering. So in other words, they just have a big wheel, and then you have to go like this and cross your arms, which is a big no-no nowadays. Go, baby, go! Buttery smooth though. Once you're in a straight line, everything's perfect. It's all good. It's just, we were going down that back road a second ago. I was like, I'm gonna take this slow and just kind of enjoy cruising around. You know, the Maverick feels like a car that was built to go A to B. And if you wanted to make it a crazy drag racer, you could have. But going around corners, I see why the Europeans didn't take it seriously for a very long time. Also, sometimes you get the floatiness feeling of being unsettled. You hit an unsettled bump, you feel the car do the kind of camber change in the road, kind of like this. So when you brake, it has drum brakes all the way around, so I'm using both feet to stop. Note to self, drum brakes, there's a reason why they were phased out. Maverick is pretty special to me too, because it was actually my dad's first car. He saw the car basically in somebody's yard sitting around, and the guy was like, hey, if you can fix it, you can have it for 300 bucks, something like that. And my dad figured out that it was the flywheel, got the flywheel fixed, and there was probably rust in the floorboards, but he still drove that at his first car. It was also a manual, and after that, he never wanted a manual again, because it was always having kind of problems with the clutch and everything, because it was an old car. The Maverick was not a car, for the most part, that lasted a long time. Most people kind of let them rot away. And that's why you don't see them at classic car shows like the Nova or the Chevelle or stuff like that. For some reason, you go to a classic car show, and if you see a Maverick, it's a surprise. You know, it's a different kind of car that just really wasn't around. You still mad it, and it's fun. And okay, okay, stop, okay. I turned the wheel, and the whole car goes like this. So you gotta watch out for the body roll. You totally see why Ford was scared of the own creation of the Mustang, because they were probably like, everybody's buying this car. It set a sales record so atrocious that they were like, we're never gonna beat this again. But in 1970, I believe that the Maverick was selling pretty much just as good as the Mustang at one point, because the Mustang's hype finally was starting to fade away. Mustang came out in '64, everybody bought it the first year it came out, they lost their mind, and then they're like, all right, we got the Mustang, now what else is there? No trail braking in this car. I'm going straight, yet my wheel's a little crooked. Honestly though, it's funny because Travis pulled up to our little Dallas-Fort Worth car meet we had yesterday. I want to thank everybody who came out to that, by the way. It was really chill, really good time, really good group of people. Everybody was super easy to talk to. But side note, I saw this Maverick there and it really stuck out. And I was like, that's interesting. And Travis instantly, his opening was, can you drive my car? And I was like, I'm not sure yet because I might have a shoot afterwards. But I was like, oh, screw it, let's do it. And we ended up doing it today. And I saw it, and it had the, you know, the flat black paint on it, and it had that old look to it, the old school muscle car look, because the front of the car, the round headlights, the grille, it has a very signature look of this era. The 70s was the era where if you weren't educated on cars, it probably was pretty confusing. There was probably a lot of cars at the time that competed with the Maverick that if you didn't know what it was, you probably just call it a Nova or call it something else. Because the Maverick was in competition with also the Dodge Dart out of all cars. And the Dodge Dart was so crazy fast, which is so funny because they had the big Mopar packages for those cars, but the Maverick really never had a crazy fast version. You almost have to do this like Scandinavian flick to get it to go around. What's cool is this car has done some 8th mile racing too. It's in its natural habitat. Part of Ford's company legacy that was very different than everything else they had made. Coming from the Falcon, which was such a huge success for a while, and then they brought it back later, when the Falcon got the limelight again, the Maverick was forgotten about. So they just ditched it and left it for dead. I mean, the interior feels very Mustang-ish. I mean, you look at the gauges, it's pretty much the same font of numbers on the gauges. All your controls are on your left. They're very easy to reach. You have lights, windshield wipers, all that good stuff. Get on it, you feel the whole nose coming up. Your steering is ahead of what the car wants to do. I think that's the best way to put it. You turn it and then it does it. Meanwhile, more modern cars, you turn it and it's like, okay, we're doing it right now. You look at the motor, it's simple. Nowadays you have sensors, harnesses, ECUs, having to go to a standalone ECU, having to do a new harness, having to wire things in, having to switch wires sometimes. All this stuff. Oh look, I just did my new harness. Now back then everything was manual and it was mechanical, which makes things break sometimes. But at the same time, if it does break, it's a simple fix. You're not telling a computer with a check engine light, all right, we need to figure out which code it is. Don't get me wrong, if you add codes to it, to a car, it does make life a little simpler in a way, going, oh, that's exactly what's wrong. This is also the days before traditional struts and springs and all that. This is a leaf spring setup, which causes a lot of the bounciness. Also makes it incredibly mechanically simple. So if you need to change out a spring or something like that, you're not dealing with a lot of the things we have to deal with today. What do you guys think about the Ford Maverick? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And did you even know that this car existed? Because I'm curious to see that as well. I upload every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and I will see you guys next time. But take it easy. I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.